If this story spoke to something inside you, if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or quietly pushed aside, then this is the place for you. On this channel, we share real, powerful stories of quiet strength, strategic comebacks, and the people who refuse to be erased. Maya's journey isn't just inspiring, it's a reminder that your voice, your work, and your worth matter, even if others fail to see it. So, if you believe in rising with dignity, in rebuilding what others tried to break, and in winning without making noise, hit that subscribe button. Tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. This community is built for those who've been told to stay small and chose instead to build something unstoppable. You're not alone, and your story might be next. They told me I should feel grateful just to still be employed. That was their version of appreciation after everything. But that night, the one where everything quietly began to shift, gratitude was the last thing on my mind. I was just trying not to fall asleep at my workstation. The overhead fluorescents flickered above me, buzzing like they were worn out too. It was 10:43 p.m. in a half-empty tech hub in Raleigh, North Carolina. The kind of cold around me wasn't from the vents, it was the cold that settles in when you're the last one left. I typed another command into the system diagnostics and rubbed the back of my neck. My phone buzzed. A missed call from Mom. 2 texts. We saved you a slice of cake. Your niece blew out the candles for you again. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then turned it face down. I wanted to be there. But tomorrow was the final deadline for the supply chain sync update. After layoffs, my entire team had been gutted. I was the only one left to finish it. No one offered support. No one said thank you. Still, I clung to the stubborn belief that if I made it perfect, anyone would finally see me. Then the screen blinked. A minor calculation error on line 383. I squinted, rewrote the formula, and then something clicked. What if I didn't just patch it? What if I re-engineered the entire logic layer to predict disruptions instead of reacting to them? Real-time supplier data, autonomous rerouting, latency pattern recognition. My pulse quickened. I opened a blank doc. My fingers started to move. The pen beside me scratched rough logic onto my notepad. For the first time in weeks, I felt awake, fully awake. This wasn't about a raise or recognition. It was about building something too sharp, too vital to be dismissed. Maybe next time my phone buzzed, it wouldn't be a missed birthday, it'd be acknowledgement. I didn't know it then, but I had just written the first line of what would become a game-changing platform. The next morning, I arrived at the executive review meeting 20 minutes early. Tablet and coffee in hand, I sat near the back, close enough to see the screen. My name wasn't on the agenda, not unusual. Developers were invisible unless something failed. But nothing had failed. Everything had worked better than projections. The system I'd created was now stabilizing supply chain fluctuations in real time. Supplier lag had dropped 30%. Quarterly cost savings had doubled. Internally, it was being called the silent engine. I knew they meant me, even if no one said it aloud. The boardroom filled quickly, directors, VPs, even the CFO, all grinning rehearsed smiles. My boss, David, entered last, holding the clicker like a man about to take credit for something historic. Let's begin, he said, nodding at the assistant to dim the lights. Slide 1. System name, bolded. Slide 2. Performance metrics. Slide 3. Glowing feedback from our top 2 clients. Slide 4. Internal attribution. I leaned forward slightly, expecting at least a line, maybe thanks to lead engineer Maya Tran tucked into the corner. Instead, it read, developed in collaboration with strategic advisory and brand leadership teams. I blinked. Marketing. The same group that once asked me how to spell API. My name wasn't there. Not even in 6-point font. No one looked at me. No one even seemed surprised. Maybe they tucked my name into the speaker notes. Maybe a line at the bottom of the slide would read, Technical implementation led by Maya Tran, Senior Systems Architect. But no. The line that appeared was sterile and polished. Developed in partnership with strategic insights and brand alignment teams. I stared at it. Strategic insights? That's the same crew that debated font sizes for 2 meetings and asked if the system could just auto-fix itself. Brand alignment? They'd emailed me twice, once to change button colors, once to confirm if API meant automated pixel interface. No joke. I scanned the boardroom again. No recognition. Not even a nod. Everyone kept their eyes fixed on the glowing screen. David, my boss, moved his laser pointer across the slide like a proud conductor. "We're calling this a huge success from our leadership innovation group," he said. My innovation. My code. My algorithms. I smiled. Not because I felt good, because I'd practiced it. That mild, professional smile people expect. The kind that masks the slow grind inside your chest. In that moment, I felt like someone had taken a script I wrote, handed it to another actor, and given them a standing ovation. The hours, the missed holidays, the birthdays, the nights where my vision blurred from sleep deprivation, invisible. As the lights came up and the applause swelled around the room, I stayed put. Still. Anonymous. They didn't acknowledge me. Not yet. But I was finished waiting. I wasn't going to chase credit anymore. Next time, I'd build something they couldn't claim or contain. At 9:05 the next morning, the quarterly performance report went live. At 9:21, cheers erupted upstairs. By 9:30, the company's valuation officially surpassed the $1 billion mark. I remained at my desk in the west corner, a spot I'd sat in for 3 years. Not important enough to be near leadership, not unimportant enough to be in overflow. From where I sat, I could hear them popping corks 2 floors up. Celebration echoing through ductwork. I didn't toast. I didn't need to. I already knew what I'd built. The dynamic logic layer was functioning better than our wildest forecasts. It was rolling out to 3 more clients. It self-corrected in under a second. It predicted shipment variances before they hit. It slashed waste across distribution nodes. And it made our competitors scramble. Still, no one tapped my shoulder. No cake. No thank you email. Just laughter drifting through steel vents and filtered light. I opened my inbox to get back to work, scrolling through project updates until a headline stopped me. Tech Chronicle, right move, right time. How executives accidentally engineered a billion-dollar backbone. I clicked. In the second paragraph, a sentence scorched into my chest. Sources within the firm credit the win to a nimble leadership response and insights from their internal advisory task force. The rollout, they said, was a stroke of luck timed perfectly with market shifts. Luck. They called it luck. I reread the line 3 times. I wanted to feel amused. I wanted to shake it off. But what I felt instead was something hot and silent, something heavy, boiling at the edges. They hadn't gotten lucky. I hadn't stumbled onto this. I'd built it, logic by logic, page by page, through nights my hands trembled from stress, through layoffs that cut too close, through outlines scribbled on napkins and receipts. Later that day, as I passed the break room, they were still celebrating. Champagne clinked. An intern filmed as the HR director cut into cake. No one noticed me in the doorway. So I kept walking, past the balloons, past the article printout taped next to the coffee station. They could delete my name from slides. They could bury the truth in buzzwords. But they couldn't erase what I'd made. And even as I walked away, one question grew louder than their applause. Do they really believe I was an accident? Do they really think I just happened to be in the right place at the right time? If so, they were about to discover what precision looks like when it's fully intentional. At 10:02 a.m., a message popped up. No subject line. Just, "Can you stop by my office?" David didn't include a calendar link or any details. That alone told me everything I needed to know. He was seated behind his desk, barely glancing up from whatever meaningless spreadsheet he was pretending to review. "Go ahead and shut the door," he muttered. I'd heard that voice before. It was the same voice people use when handing you a folded flag instead of an explanation. We just completed a compensation restructuring across technical roles, he began without preamble. Leadership has decided to align investment towards scalable outcomes. Then came the part he thought would land gently. Effective next pay cycle, your base salary will be adjusted by 42%. I didn't blink. I didn't ask questions. I just let the words sit in the air like a spark in dry grass. I know this isn't easy to hear, he continued. You're incredibly capable, Maya. But we need systems that don't depend on individual brilliance. Standardized processes. Repeatable logic. Not exceptional contributors. That's the direction we're moving. He paused, expecting gratitude for his clarity. We'll also need you to scrub the codebase. Some of your variable names and annotations are highly personalized. The final version needs to be clean, unified. Standard. Replaceable. Anonymous. I nodded. My voice moved before I knew what it was saying. Understood. He exhaled, relieved. Like he'd checked a difficult box off his list. But I wasn't conceding. I was recording every syllable, burning each line into memory. That afternoon, I sat at my terminal like a stranger visiting her own legacy. I combed through the codebase. My annotations. My 3 a.m. notes. Functions crafted not for flair, but for stability. Architecture meant to outlast ego. They wanted it stripped down. So I did it. I flattened the logic, renamed the variables, erased every trace of the soul I'd poured into it. Then I archived a different version, one they'd never find. No access. No trail. And in a blank notebook, I began outlining something new. Not an update. A reinvention. A system that wouldn't just solve problems. It would anticipate them. Adapt on the fly. Quietly dominate. This time, I wouldn't hide my name in a comment field. I'd etch it into the outcome. The LinkedIn message came the next day. Short. Cordial. Curious. Would love to reconnect. Let's catch up. My treat. Caroline Ng, COO, Meridian Logic. It had been 3 years since we sat across from each other in that glass conference room, where she smiled politely and told me, "You're incredibly talented, Maya, but we're looking for someone with more of a business-first mindset." She'd said it kindly, like she was handing me a participation trophy. Now she wanted to meet again. I almost deleted it, but then I remembered David's tone. The applause I never received. The article that called my system a lucky timing event. Curiosity has a sharp edge when mixed with unfinished business. So I said yes. We met on a rooftop in downtown Raleigh, at a place where the music was soft and the lighting was designed to look like starlight strung between oak beams. Caroline was already seated when I arrived, one hand holding a wine glass, the other resting on a folder she hadn't opened yet. Maya, she greeted me warmly, standing to offer a hug like we were old colleagues instead of paths that almost crossed. You look unbothered. I've had practice, I said, easing into the chair across from her. We ordered quickly. Then, for the first half hour, we circled safe ground. Supply chain volatility, the rise of edge AI, labor gaps in predictive tech. All surface. All controlled. Then she placed her glass down and leaned forward just a hair. "Let me ask you something, off the record," she said. "If you could rebuild what you made, without legacy code, without internal constraints, what could it actually do?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I had imagined that exact question every night since they cut my pay. Caroline swirled a Bordeaux in her glass, eyes grazing the cityscape like she was mapping territory she already owned. "Maya," she said warmly, standing as if we were old friends reconnecting after a long absence. "You look like none of this phases you." "I've had practice," I replied, settling across from her with an ease I didn't actually feel. The server arrived, we ordered, and for the next 30 minutes we danced around industry headlines. Shifts in procurement strategies. AI-influenced forecasting. Post-pandemic instability. Safe ground. Predictable commentary. Then Caroline set her drink down and laced her fingers together on the table. "Let me ask something off the record," she said, leaning slightly forward. "If you had the chance to rebuild your platform from the ground up, no inherited framework, no corporate interference, what could it do?" I blinked, not because I didn't know, but because that question had been echoing in my own mind for weeks. Every night since they cut my pay, I had been designing a better version in my head. "What kind of capability are we talking about?" I asked carefully. She gave a small, contemplative smile, one that lacked the smugness I remembered from 3 years ago. This wasn't posturing. This was interest. Serious interest. Enough to make Meridian invincible. Enough to leave the original in the dust. There it was. Not a job offer. A challenge. She wanted to see if the woman she once deemed too technical had grown sharper, harder. If the quiet loyalty I once showed had finally turned into something more focused. I looked past her, toward the skyline of downtown Raleigh, familiar and distant at once. My fingertips slid across the condensation on my water glass. I could deflect, decline, walk away and let her wonder what might have been. Or I could show them all what they should have seen the first time. I met her eyes and answered evenly. If I built it today, it wouldn't just react, it would anticipate. It would refine itself, adapt in real time, and no one could replicate it. Because no one else thinks the way I do. She didn't look away. Then maybe it's time someone gave you space to think. And just like that, everything aligned, not gifted, but earned. The next morning, I arrived at the office while it was still dark. Not to prove anything to anyone, but because I needed silence to focus, to design, to quietly disappear in full view. The building was mostly asleep. My ID badge still opened doors. My name was still listed in the internal directory, but it all felt temporary, like I was a guest on borrowed time. I sat at my desk, pulled open the drawer, and retrieved a notebook. Real paper. No Bluetooth. No cloud sync. Just ink and leather. Private. Mine. That's where it started, not with code, but questions. What would a truly independent system look like? Without rushed timelines, without internal politics, without someone rearranging slide decks to steal credit? I didn't copy. I didn't iterate. I reinvented. From decision trees to failover loops, from core intelligence patterns to predictive thresholds, I rebuilt the framework silently alone. No commit history. No draft emails. No audit trail. That evening, as I flipped through my original employment contract, I found the gap in the NDA David made me sign during restructuring. It only covered ideas formally submitted, tested, or deployed during active employment. But this was still an idea. A design in my personal notebook. Unfiled, undeclared, undiscovered. That's when I stopped feeling angry and started planning. They wanted an obedient contributor. I gave them one. I smiled when David praised my team spirit. I even helped document their sanitized build. But I was already creating something else. Something they'd never see coming. They couldn't take what they didn't know existed. I wasn't plotting revenge, I was crafting freedom. The system I envisioned wasn't grandiose. It was sharp, efficient, elegant. Designed to evolve without overhead. It didn't require a team of developers or quarterly oversight meetings. It didn't need buy-in from marketing or approval from leadership. It was mine. Every night, I lingered long after the others had gone home. Not to log hours, not to be seen, but because working in secret felt like breathing again. I wasn't patching legacy errors or triaging management's last-minute chaos. I was creating something stable, intuitive, controlled. Each notebook entry reclaimed a piece of myself they'd tried to erase, my ingenuity, my name, my narrative. I locked the book away during the day, carried it home each evening, and sometimes kept it beneath my pillow, not for protection, but as a reminder. This wasn't theirs to dilute. It wasn't part of any product sprint or executive roadmap. It was a blueprint for autonomy. They would never see it coming. And when it launched, they'd have no idea how to counter it. The countdown began the moment David handed me the HR packet. "We appreciate your cooperation during this transition," he said with his polished smile. What he meant was, "Thanks for staying quiet." But silence has gravity. And I knew exactly how to wield it. By the second week, I was assigned the usual offboarding protocol, knowledge transfer sessions, system walkthroughs, handover documentation. I agreed. Professionalism was the role I'd been cast in. I could play it to the end. But when I stepped into the glass conference room and saw who was waiting, something in my chest tightened. Derek. Same tailored blazer. Same practice smirk. Same empty charisma. 3 years ago, we'd collaborated, briefly, on a real-time inventory initiative. I had suggested a predictive balancing algorithm based on shipment variability and live weather data. He called it too theoretical, then pitched the exact concept to a different team under his own name. He got a bonus. I got reassigned. "Wow, Maya, been a while," he said like we were old college friends. I offered a polite smile. "Glad you could join." He had been hired as the new senior architecture advisor. A fancy title for someone being handed a system he never understood. I pulled up the primary interface on the screen, began stepping through each module, describing the configurations, input layers, and dynamic behaviors. I kept it clinical, no commentary, no emotion. Just specs. Derek nodded along, asked shallow questions, and cracked half-hearted jokes to fill the quiet. I let him. I had no interest in correcting him. That wasn't the point. There were moments I wanted to say it aloud, to remind him of what he'd taken, to show him the archived drafts with my initials still embedded in version history. But I didn't, because I had already moved beyond it. This wasn't about vindication. This was clarity. Let him present diagrams he barely grasped. Let him tweak lines of code he didn't write. Because when my new platform went live, he wouldn't even recognize its design. Watching him fumble through the walkthrough, I felt something unexpected. Not fury, but a subtle, hollow sympathy. He thought he'd inherited a crown. But what he received was a husk. A neutered build stripped of innovation, constructed to degrade slowly. A monument to everything he didn't understand. The final month crawled. HR sent impersonal checklists. Legal forwarded template notices. David stopped speaking to me entirely. But I came in. Every day. Logged hours. Smiled in meetings. I even brought muffins on my final Friday. They wanted a quiet exit. I gave them one. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I documented what they asked. I hosted the final handoffs. I wore my quiet professionalism like armor. On my last Friday, I even brought lemon bars to the lounge. They expected a polite departure. I gave them exactly that. But the future? That stayed with me. And Derek, he had no idea he'd just been handed a hollow framework. He sat on a throne made of borrowed code and assumptions already fraying at the seams. At precisely 8:01 a.m. the following Monday, I submitted my official resignation. It wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. A message in code, clean, efficient, undeniable. Effective in 30 days, I will be stepping down from my role as senior systems architect. I'm grateful for the learning and will ensure a full and cooperative transition. I read it once, then clicked send. For hours, there was nothing. No reply. No acknowledgement. Just the same stale air I'd worked under for years. Maybe it had always felt this heavy, and I'd just learned to carry it. Around 11:45, Lila from HR stopped by. She carried a manila envelope and the kind of smile people wear when they don't know what else to say. "Maya, hey, just dropping off your paperwork. Let me know if you need anything." "Looks like you've already thought this through." "I have," I said, keeping it simple. She hesitated, just for a second. "We'll, miss your precision," she offered, then turned and walked briskly down the hallway, disappearing before I could respond. Inside the envelope? Forms. Signatures. A step-by-step checklist for fading out of existence. By mid-afternoon, I received an automated message from the internal HR system. Subject: Resignation terms confirmed. We acknowledge receipt of your notice. Thank you for maintaining confidentiality and alignment with company communication protocols during your transition. Your cooperation is noted and appreciated. No name, no warmth, just a template built to erase. It didn't sting like betrayal. It was colder, like an obituary you were forced to proofread. I got up and walked the perimeter of the office, passing the collaboration space where Derek now held court. He was pointing at one of my dashboards, explaining its logic to a junior developer I had mentored for over a year. She looked up as I passed, her expression briefly confused, like she wasn't sure whether to speak. I nodded once. She didn't respond. By my final week, I'd been removed from code reviews. No more invites to planning meetings. My badge no longer granted entry to the secured server rooms. Someone else's name had already taken over the system maintenance line item on the resource board. No announcement. No farewell email. Not even a supermarket cake with good luck scrawled in icing. They weren't just ushering me out. They were trying to erase the fact I had ever been there at all. That was the part that burned. That last afternoon, I packed slowly. My ergonomic keyboard. The mechanical pencil set I'd used to draft my earliest models. A few printed schematics. And the ceramic mug my younger sister gave me when I landed the job. It read, "Think quiet. Deliver loud." I left the mug behind. Then I reached for the one thing that mattered, the notebook. The same one that had lived in my drawer by day and in my bag by night. The one that held diagrams, not dreams. Proof, not potential. I turned to the last page and wrote a single word. Wait. I zipped the notebook into my shoulder bag, slung it over my coat, and made my way past David's glass office. He was mid-call, talking numbers and projections with someone on speaker. He didn't glance up. And that was fine. Because the next time they looked, it wouldn't be at me walking out. It would be at what I'd already built. They wouldn't be staring at the space I'd left behind. They'd be staring at the impact of what I'd already set in motion. And by then, their reaction wouldn't matter. It took 3 days. That's how long it took after I stepped out of their building for the tremors to begin. Badge surrendered. Laptop wiped. Directory profile deactivated. And then the unveiling. At exactly 9:07 a.m., Meridian Logic released a public announcement, introducing Vera, the next generation in predictive operational intelligence. I was already seated in my new workspace. Modest, but private. It had soft light, a door that shut quietly, and best of all, ownership. The coffee in my hand was warm. The silence was mine. The tech world didn't just notice. It erupted. Vera wasn't a competitor to what I'd built before. It was the evolution. Modular, nimble, completely independent of legacy infrastructure. It anticipated disruptions, rerouted resources, and recalibrated in real time without needing human intervention. Exactly what I'd been designing in the shadows. The system they refused to let me finish. Within the first hour, my former employer, Triarch Systems, saw its stock take a sharp dive, 11% before noon. By the end of the trading day, it was down 17%. Their customer support network struggled to handle the influx of integration cancellation requests. Even their cornerstone client, Northwave Freight, released a carefully worded statement. We are currently reconsidering our long-term digital partnerships. Translation: they were walking away. The most satisfying part? No one at Triarch had any idea who created Vera. Caroline had intentionally omitted my name from the early press material. Let's control the rollout, she'd said. I didn't argue. I thought it was poetic. That afternoon, my phone lit up with a familiar name, Mark Ellery, a senior analyst who once interviewed David for a fluff article on leadership resilience. Maya, he started, breathless, is there any truth to the rumors? People are saying you're behind, Vera. I leaned back in my chair, smiling faintly. Why would I comment on something I was never allowed to finish? He went silent for a beat. Then, more softly, so it really was you this whole time? Or maybe, I replied, Watching the sun edge past the downtown skyline, I just decided it was time to stop repairing broken visions that weren't mine. I ended the call before he could ask more. The story would write itself soon enough. Outside my office window, the Triarch Systems logo was still visible across the street. It looked different now, less imposing. Almost like a remnant of something that had already faded. Later that day, Caroline stopped by. She didn't knock. She walked in and placed a crisp folder on my desk. Vera just secured its third enterprise client in under 5 hours, she said. And Northwave's requesting full integration by Q3. She tilted her head and smiled. You're officially the biggest disruption in their history. I looked up at her, then at the folder. You mean we are? She held my gaze for a moment, then nodded. We are. After she left, I let out a breath not from relief, but from release. The kind of breath you only take after breaking through something that tried to contain you. They thought they had minimized me, discarded me. All they'd done was unleash me. Now I wasn't just outside their system. I had architected the one that would make theirs obsolete. The irony landed a final blow 3 weeks later. Triarch reached out. No threat. No accusation. They wanted a conversation. A proposal. A partnership, perhaps. Or maybe just a way to survive. Caroline forwarded me the email with a short note. Thought this might give you a laugh. I didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, I pulled up my portfolio dashboard and hit refresh. There it was, bright, clear, undeniable. Maya Tran, third largest private stakeholder in Meridian Logic. And I hadn't written a single line of code for them until I owned the direction. The morning sun cast long lines across my desk as I reviewed the numbers again. 6 months before David ever mentioned a compensation realignment, I had begun slowly acquiring shares in Meridian Logic. Not out of spite, but because I understood that ideas, real, transformative ones, deserve space to grow. Sometimes, the only way to change a system is to become one of its owners. That morning, I met with Elise, Meridian's CFO, to go over our upcoming positioning plan. She glanced up from the Triarch proposal, raising an eyebrow. They're making an offer, she said. Not terrible, considering their situation. But to move forward, they'd want to know who authored the core framework behind Vera. I leaned back, arms folded. Let them wonder a bit longer. She smirked. You really are a scalpel with a shadow. Not a bad reputation to carry. That afternoon, a crew from Channel 9 arrived. Marcus Hayes, a reporter who once profiled David for a corporate culture segment, finally got his long-awaited sit-down. Caroline agreed, but only if I was the one speaking. On record. We met in a quiet studio, no banners, no fanfare. Just a pair of chairs and overdue truth. You had grounds to pursue legal action against Triarch, Marcus said. Why didn't you? I looked at him, composed. Because I didn't need to claw back what was taken. I just had to build something better and make them pay to catch up. He nodded once. No follow-up. Some truths land better without echo. Later, I stood beside my office window, watching the skyline hum under the late North Carolina sun. It didn't feel distant anymore. It felt malleable, like I had a hand in shaping what came next. They'd tried to erase my work, discredit my name, strip it of authorship. But what they couldn't strip was design born of vision, focus, and unshakable clarity. This time, every element carried my signature, visible or not. And no executive pitch deck could rewrite that. If you've ever been silenced in a room you helped build, this story is your reminder. You don't have to reclaim what they stole. You can create something bolder, something unmistakable. And when it's done, you won't be asking for a seat. They'll be asking how to enter your room. If this resonated, share it. And if you believe in quiet strength and unshakable comebacks, subscribe. This was one story. But it won't be the last.